Matthew Stafford stays with the Rams. What it means for the Raiders. Big news for NFL fans, especially those rooting for the Las Vegas Raiders. This morning, it was confirmed that Matthew Stafford has restructured his contract and extended his stay with the Los Angeles Rams. That officially puts an end to any hopes of seeing Stafford in a Raiders uniform. For Raiders fans, this is a tough pill to swallow. There was real potential for the team to bring in Stafford, go all in on a championship push, and strengthen their shot at a Super Bowl run. He would have been an excellent fit for the team, but in the end, the deal didn't work out. Reports suggest the Raiders only offered him a 2-year contract, which wasn't enough to convince Stafford. On top of that, the Rams were asking for the 6th overall draft pick, a price the Raiders weren't willing to pay. And honestly, that makes sense. Paying a quarterback $50 million is already a huge investment, but giving up a top draft pick on top of that? That's a tough decision. So, where does this leave the Raiders? The team will now shift its focus to other veteran quarterbacks. According to sources, the Raiders are exploring options like Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, and Sam Darnold. Some fans are calling for the team to draft a rookie quarterback instead, but this year's class isn't exactly stacked with elite prospects. Outside of CamWard, there aren't many first-round-worthy quarterbacks, which means using the 6th overall pick on a rookie would be a major risk. Instead, the Raiders could use that pick to land an elite edge rusher or another impact player. While missing out on Stafford is disappointing, this could still work in the Raiders' favor. Now, the focus shifts to finding the right quarterback to lead the team forward. Will it be a veteran? Will they take a chance on a young talent? Only time will tell. The best move for the Raiders? Stick with a veteran quarterback. The Raiders have a big decision to make with their 6th overall pick in the NFL draft. Instead of gambling on a risky quarterback prospect, they could use that pick to land a game-changing wide receiver or running back, someone who could shape the future of the team for the next decade or more. The talent available in this draft class makes it clear, using that pick on an unproven quarterback just doesn't make sense. Next year's draft class looks much stronger at the quarterback position. Players like Garrett Nussmeier and Drew Aller are already showing promise, and every year there's always that one quarterback who surprises everyone and rises into the top 5 conversation. This means the smarter move for the Raiders right now is to go with a veteran quarterback while keeping their valuable draft pick for another position. Matthew Stafford would have been the ideal choice, giving the team an immediate shot at playoff contention. But with him staying in Los Angeles, the Raiders now have to explore other options. Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are 2 names being considered, but neither comes without concerns. Wilson is more consistent and might bring some stability, but he hasn't shown he can still win big playoff games. Fields, on the other hand, is a high-risk, high-reward player. He could either develop into a star or completely bust. Then there's Sam Darnold, who brings a different skill set to the table. Unlike Wilson and Fields, his career path has been unpredictable, and while he hasn't lived up to expectations, he could still be an intriguing option for the Raiders. At the end of the day, the Raiders need to be smart with their decision. They can't afford to waste their draft pick on an uncertain quarterback when they could strengthen other areas of the team. A veteran quarterback may not be a long-term solution, but for now, it seems like the best move to keep the Raiders competitive. The risk of a long-term commitment at quarterback. The Raiders have a tough choice ahead when it comes to finding their next quarterback, and one of the biggest concerns is committing to the wrong player long-term. Take Sam Darnold, for example. While he had a solid season last year and is still relatively young, around 26 or 27, there's no way to know if he'll develop into a top 5 quarterback in the next few years. Betting on him now could either be a great move or a major setback. The problem with a long-term deal is that if it doesn't work out, the team could end up stuck in a bad situation. Just look at the Atlanta Falcons last season or the Cleveland Browns, who are locked into a massive contract with Deshaun Watson, paying him $50 million per year for the next few seasons. If the Raiders commit to Darnold and he doesn't pan out, they could find themselves in a similar mess, unable to move on and forced to roll with a quarterback who isn't getting them anywhere. That's why, if the Raiders are going the veteran route, Darnold should probably be their last option. However, if they believe he can be a playoff-caliber quarterback, similar to how Geno Smith found success in Seattle, then maybe he's worth considering. Still, it's a gamble, and the safer choice might be a short-term solution instead of a long-term commitment. If the Raiders are looking for a veteran, Aaron Rodgers might be the better option. Even though he's older and not at his peak, he's still more reliable than Wilson, Fields, or Darnold. Plus, Rodgers wouldn't require a long-term commitment. If things don't work out, the team could reset next season without being locked into a bad contract. At the end of the day, the Raiders need to be smart about their quarterback decision. A short-term fix like Rodgers could buy them time to find the right long-term answer, rather than gambling on a risky commitment that could set them back for years. The best path forward for the Raiders. If the Raiders don't find their quarterback this offseason, they can always wait for next year's draft class, which could offer better options. That's why going after Aaron Rodgers right now makes the most sense. However, recent reports suggest that Rodgers is likely headed to the New York Giants. It wouldn't be a huge move for him since he was with the Jets last season, and it might be the best fit for him. That said, Rodgers' personality and leadership style might not mesh well with certain coaches, so there's still some uncertainty about where he'll land. For the Raiders, missing out on Matthew Stafford is a tough break. He would have been a strong, reliable option. Now they're left looking at quarterbacks like Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, and Sam Darnold. Some people have even suggested Zach Wilson as a possibility, but that doesn't seem like a great idea. Unlike Darnold, who has at least shown flashes of talent, Zach Wilson has yet to prove he can be a capable starter in the NFL. If he had any real upside, it would have been evident by now. If the Raiders were to bring in someone like Zach Wilson, they might as well open up a full competition with backup quarterbacks like Justin Fields, Joshua Dobbs, and others to see if anyone can take the job. At that point, it would feel more like a desperate attempt rather than a well-thought-out plan. The silver lining is that the offseason isn't over yet. The Raiders still have time to make a move, and with free agency approaching, they can explore multiple options. While missing out on Stafford is disappointing, there are still veteran quarterbacks available. Now the focus shifts to making the smartest possible decision for the team's future. The Raiders are taking the right approach. The season doesn't start tomorrow. The Raiders still have plenty of time to make the right decision at quarterback. And from the way they're handling things, it looks like they're being patient and strategic, which is exactly what they should be doing. There's no point in rushing to sign a quarterback just for the sake of it, especially if he's not the right fit for the team. The fact that the Raiders showed interest in Matthew Stafford and Ben Johnson is actually a good sign. It means they're targeting proven talent instead of making reckless moves. Some fans have been frustrated that the team has spoken with top players but hasn't been able to sign them yet. But the reality is, if you don't start conversations with these players, you'll never get a chance to bring them in at all. That's just part of the process. Even though they missed out on Stafford, the Raiders are still in a position to improve. Tom Brady is reportedly involved in helping the team find a winning formula. And while nothing happens overnight, the right decisions now will set them up for success in the long run. One of the biggest mistakes they could make would be overcommitting to the wrong quarterback. For example, if they were to give Sam Darnold a massive contract, something like $300 million guaranteed over 5 years, they would be stuck if he didn't pan out. Then, if they had a high draft pick next year and a chance to grab a top prospect like Garrett Nussmeier or Drew Aller, they wouldn't be able to make that move because they'd already committed to Darnold. The Pittsburgh Steelers offer a great example of why patience is important. They tried Kenny Pickett, and it didn't work out. They've brought in multiple quarterbacks, including Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, without making any long-term commitments. That flexibility has allowed them to keep their options open. The Raiders need to follow the same approach. By staying patient and making smart decisions, they'll eventually land the right quarterback, whether it's through free agency, a trade, or next year's draft. The most important thing is not to panic and commit to the wrong player just because they feel pressure to make a move now. Raiders reportedly shopping. Michael Mayer, a surprising move. In a surprising turn of events, reports suggest that the Las Vegas Raiders are exploring trade options for tight end Michael Mayer and running back Zamir White. While the potential departure of White might not be a major shock, the idea of trading Mayer has raised eyebrows across the league. This report, coming from reliable sources like Tashin Reed and Vic Tafur of The Athletic, is hard to dismiss as mere speculation. Mayer, a player the Raiders actually traded up to draft, has yet to make a significant impact in his first 2 seasons. His rookie year was underwhelming, and in his second season, the Raiders essentially replaced him by bringing in Brock Bowers. Initially, the team claimed they would use both tight ends in a 12 personnel formation, ensuring Mayer would still have a role. However, when the Raiders switched to 11 personnel, 1 running back, 1 tight end, Mayer was often sidelined while Bowers took on the primary tight end duties. Additionally, Mayer missed the first half of the season, which could have affected his development and playing time. Looking back, the decision to draft Mayer was somewhat controversial. Tight ends rarely transform a team's success unless they are truly elite, like Brock Bowers appears to be. At the time of the draft, Mayer wasn't even the first or second tight end taken, which suggests other teams may have viewed him as a mid-tier prospect. The Raiders' former leadership, including Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels, saw something special in Mayer. But 2 years later, he hasn't shown enough to justify that investment. Now, with 2 years left on his rookie contract, the Raiders might still be able to find a trade partner. Teams in desperate need of a tight end could be willing to offer a mid to late round pick, possibly a fourth or even a third in an ideal scenario. However, Mayer has yet to prove he can be a game changer. He isn't a true separator, nor has he demonstrated the ability to make plays after the catch. Of course, it's possible that Mayer simply hasn't had the right opportunities to shine. But based on the tape, even in plays where he wasn't targeted, he hasn't stood out as a difference maker. If the Raiders do move on from him, it will be a clear signal that they're committed to building around Bowers and adjusting their offensive strategy moving forward. Raiders' decision on Michael Mayer and Zamir White. A tough call. The Las Vegas Raiders appear to be actively shopping tight end Michael Mayer, and while it's a surprising move, there's still a case to be made for keeping him on the roster. Mayer may not have developed into a dominant offensive weapon, but he remains a solid blocker and a potential contributor if given a full, uninterrupted offseason to improve. One of the biggest concerns with Mayer has been his lack of crisp route running and inability to consistently create separation. While he does possess the size to win contested catches, that alone doesn't justify a significant role in the offense. However, if the Raiders hold on to him, he could still serve as a useful piece, especially as insurance in case of injuries. If Brock Bowers needs to shift to a wide receiver role due to injuries elsewhere, Mayer could step in as the starting tight end. The main issue with trading Mayer is that the Raiders are unlikely to recover the value they originally spent on him. He was selected early in the second round, and at this point, the best return they could hope for is likely a third-round pick, though even that might be a stretch given his lack of production over 2 seasons. Trading him now might mean selling low when he still has potential value to the team. Meanwhile, Zamir White was also mentioned in trade rumors, but his market value appears to be non-existent. White has had opportunities to establish himself as a starting caliber running back, but has yet to show anything that would entice another team to offer even a late-round pick. The running back position is already devalued in today's NFL, and with White's lack of standout traits or production, the Raiders would likely have to release him outright if they choose to move on. Ultimately, this situation highlights how General Manager Tom Telesco and the new regime are reevaluating the roster. Some players, like Mayer, may not fit into their long-term vision, and while it's frustrating to see a once-promising draft pick potentially moved, the Raiders have to make tough decisions to build a competitive team. Whether they stick with Mayer or trade him, the key will be maximizing value and ensuring the roster is built for sustained success. Raiders roster shakeup. Moving on from Zamir White and Michael Mayer, the Las Vegas Raiders are reportedly considering trading tight end Michael Mayer and cutting running back Zamir White as part of an offseason overhaul. While Mayer's trade value is debatable, moving on from White seems like a logical decision given his lack of production and the depth of this year's draft class. Zamir White. No real market value. White has struggled to prove himself as a starting caliber NFL running back. While he possesses straight-line speed, his lack of vision, agility, and explosiveness makes him a poor fit for a system that requires dynamic playmakers. If the Raiders cut him, it could signal an intent to bring in multiple new backs through free agency or the draft. With a strong 2024 running back draft class, the Raiders have an opportunity to add depth and talent at the position. There could be as many as 15 rookie running backs capable of making an immediate impact, with 6 or 7 potentially earning starting roles right away. If the Raiders want to rebuild their backfield, this is the draft to do it. Michael Mayer, a surprising trade candidate. Mayer, on the other hand, still has potential, and trading him now might not yield great value. The Raiders originally invested a high draft pick in him, and while he hasn't developed into an elite pass-catching tight end, he's still a solid blocker and a useful depth piece. Unless they receive a valuable return, such as a third-round pick, holding on to him might be the smarter move. Chip Kelly's influence on offensive playmakers. New offensive coordinator Chip Kelly is expected to reshape the Raiders' offense, and that could mean prioritizing more explosive and versatile players. Kelly has historically used running backs in various roles, including lining them up in the slot or out wide to create mismatches. That suggests the Raiders will target backs with receiving ability and elusiveness in the open field. If Kelly doesn't see Mayer and White as fits for his system, it's possible both players will be moved. While White's departure seems inevitable, the decision on Mayer will likely depend on whether the Raiders believe they can maximize his value elsewhere or find a replacement in the draft. What's next? With free agency and the draft approaching, the Raiders have some tough decisions to make. If they can land playmakers who fit Kelly's vision, it makes sense to move on from White and possibly Mayer. However, unless they get strong trade offers, keeping Mayer for at least another season could be the best option. It's clear the Raiders are in the middle of a roster overhaul. Whether these moves pay off will depend on their ability to bring in the right talent to replace departing players.